I started boxing quite late actually, 13, 14. I started putting a bit of weight on at that age, and Dad said, "Oh, do you want to, come down, do some pads and stuff?" And then it just really escalated into take me down the club, and he was massively against it, obviously, because he fought his whole life and his whole career to get me in a position that I don't have to fight. So yeah, he managed to bring me down at about 15, and I fell in love with it. It was tough to have the pressure of my dad on my shoulders, but every fight I went into, every spar I went into, everybody tried to decapitate me, really. But it sort of was a character building for me, especially as a boxer, because that's ultimately what they're going to end up doing,
I didn't actively encourage any of my three boys to box. Apart from the fact that it's a ridiculously tough sport, you always have an issue, if you're a great musician or you're a great songwriter and suddenly your son shows an inclination to playing drums or playing the bass or lead guitar, you think, well, how's he going to be received by the general public? And normally there is a fairly cynical attitude towards that.
Dad trained me like a pro. He said, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it all or nothing. I boxed till I was 21, about 35 fights as an amateur. I only lost 2 of them. I won 3 national titles and did well, but my heart wasn't really in going professional. So I decided to go to the personal training aspect and go down that route. And I was actually getting sponsored by a gym, and they sort of trained me up and worked there for 2.5 years. And at the same time, I was thinking about coming back and actually turning pro. So I started training again. And whilst I started training, Carl had just turned professional. And one day Dad was going up to do an after dinner speech, and he says to me, can you do us a favour, can you hold the pads for Carl? And it just gelled, really, just from then. I mean, that was nearly 5 years ago now. I just fell in love with training, and I fell in love with training Carl, to be honest, because he's the kind of guy that's going to give you 100%, and he's going to respect you and listen to everything you say. And it just escalated into Celtic titles, and then into Commonwealth titles, into intercontinental belts, and then into the world title now. So it's my first fight I've ever worked with, and he's managed to become a world champion in the space of 4.5 years. So it's an incredible journey, and it's one that I've massively cherished.
I was training actually in Belfast for the first part of my career, my professional career. I started coming over to London and basing myself here, and I was working with Barry at the start and also a little bit with Shane. I had a couple of fights where my performances weren't great. I put them down to fitness. I didn't think I was getting the proper training and training right. And one bad performance in particular, I remember Shane actually sitting at ringside. I won the fight, but it wasn't a great performance for me. He was the voice that I wanted to hear. I had cornermen in the ring in between rounds talking to me, but he was the voice I was looking for outside. So I kind of realised then I need to be here training with Shane full time, and that's what I've done. It's a very, very strange situation that a fighter to have a coach younger than him. A lot of coaches you would see in their 60s, sometimes 70s, and sometimes 80s. In Shane, we've got a guy with a younger approach who knows about S&C, he knows about nutrition, he knows how to read a fight. He does everything for me, he plans it meticulously, and it's working a treat so far.
It's easy to just be negative towards youth, especially in the boxing industry, especially in the professional boxing as coaches. The stereotype is Mickey out of Rocky. Everyone wants that old trainer that's got that wise head, but how can they get up on their toes and replicate a boxer? How can they mimic it and keep up with their fighter? And that's something that I can do. I get it, I understand technique, I understand strength and conditioning, I understand nutrition. I can put all of the pieces of the puzzle together.
Well, it's really remarkable. He's the youngest ever trainer of a professional fighter to go and win a genuine world title. He won it when Shane was 25 years old, and I think he's a one-off in the sense that he's been a 3-time national champion, could have been an outstanding elite level amateur boxer, could have been an outstanding pro fighter.
Yeah, you learn to actually enjoy being in and around fighters and boxing and having punches winging over your head, and we call it the boxing bug. When you get it, it just haunts you. It's on your mind all the time. Every time you go to bed, every time you turn the lights off, you're thinking about boxing, and it's quite overwhelming. But it's one of those sports that you've got to battle with fear every moment that you're in the ring.
Carl needs to know when he's in a really tough fight that he can look into the corner man's eyes and believe what he's telling him. Stick to your game plan. I know you're taking punishment. I know it feels like it's not working, but it is working. Stick it, and this guy will crack after 2 or 3 rounds. That's the sort of confidence you need to have.
More importantly than anything, any technique, any nutrition, any strength and conditioning, any form of great advice, your fighter has to believe it.
And I was always just wanted to hear what he was saying. I always listened to his advice in the corner in between rounds. There's some corner men where you would go back and you would sit in your stool and you know what they're going to tell you. It's the same old advice. But with Shane, the stuff he's telling you is only going to benefit.
I think I found my niche, and that's training. I mean, Dad could do it. He was a much better fighter than I was. And he's a much better fighter than many people. It's instinctive for him. But when he steps outside the ring, he doesn't have that overall vision and say, oh, well, he's doing this wrong, he's doing that wrong, he's not bending his knee, or he's not rolling his head after he throws a combination. It's just something that's come so natural to me, and I think, over time I'm developing, just like Carl is as a boxer, I've developed massively as a coach.
When you're blowing out your backside and you're exhausted and you've got 4 rounds to go and you look into your corner man's eyes, you need to know that he knows what he's talking about. And that level of trust you cannot get unless you've been there, seen it, done it, bought the t-shirt.
He's been involved in boxing his whole life. He's been following Barry around when he was a kid, going to all these shows, and he loves it. There's other people who have been involved in boxing though who can't read a fight like Shane. I think you just either have it or you don't, and he has it.